It's for $1,000 a seat. My pulse was racing as the bailiff finally stood before the assemblage and called the room to order. I saw Jessie across the room. She was dressed like the important person that she is in the service. Pinstriped suit, heels, shiny black attaché case. She saw me and rolled her eyes. On the right side of the courtroom, I saw Catherine Rose and Thomas Dunn. Their presence brought even more of an aura of unreality. I couldn't help thinking of Charles and Anne Morrow Lindbergh and of the world-famous kidnapping trial that had taken place 60 years before. Judge Linda Kaplan was known as an eloquent and energetic woman who never let lawyers get the best of her. She had been on the bench for less than 5 years, but had already handled some of the biggest trials in Washington. Often, she stood during entire proceedings. She was known to rule her courtroom with complete authority. Gary Saniji Murphy had been quietly, almost surreptitiously, escorted to his place. He was already seated, looking well-behaved, as Gary Murphy always did. Several well-known journalists were present, at least a couple of them writing books about the kidnapping. The opposing lawyer teams looked supremely confident and well-prepared on the first day, as though their cases were invincible. The trial began with a small flourish, opening bell theatrics. At the front of the courtroom, Missy Murphy began to sob. "Gary didn't hurt anybody," she said in an audible voice. "Gary would never hurt another person." Someone in the courtroom audience called out, "Oh, give us a break, lady." Judge Kaplan smacked her gavel and commanded, "Silence in this courtroom. Silence. That will be enough of that." "Sure it will." We were off and running. Gary Saniji Murphy's Trial of the Century. Chapter 58. Everything seemed to be in perpetual motion and chaos, but especially my relationship to the original investigation and the trial. After court that day, I did the one thing that made total sense to me. I played flag football with the kids. Damon and Janelle were whirlwinds of activity, competing for my attention throughout the afternoon, smothering me with their need. They distracted me from unpleasant prospects that would stretch on for the next few weeks. After dinner that night, Nana and I stayed at the table over a second cup of chicory coffee. I wanted to hear her thoughts. I knew they were coming anyway. All during the meal, her arms and hands had been twirling like Satchel Paige about to deliver a screwball. "Alex, I believe we need to talk," she finally said. "When Nana Mama has something to say, she gets quiet first. Then she talks a lot, sometimes for hours." The kids were busy watching Wheel of Fortune in the other room. The game show cheers and chants made for good domestic background noise. "What shall we talk about?" I asked her. "Hey, did you hear that 1 in 4 kids in the U.S. now lives in poverty? We're going to be the moral majority soon." Nana was real composed and thoughtful about whatever was coming. She had been preparing this speech. I could tell that much. The pupils in her eyes had become brown pinpoints. "Alex," she said now, "you know that I'm always on your side when something is important." "Ever since I arrived in Washington with a duffel bag, and I think 75 cents, I said to her. I could still vividly remember being sent up north to live with my grandmother, the very day I'd arrived in Union Station on the train from Winston-Salem. My mother had just died of lung cancer. My father had died the year before. Nana bought me lunch at Morrison's cafeteria. It was the first time I ever ate in a restaurant. Regina Hope took me in when I was 9. Nana Mama was called the Queen of Hope back then. She was a schoolteacher here in Washington. She was already in her late 40s, and my grandfather was dead. My 3 brothers came to the Washington area at the same time that I did. They stayed with one relative or another until they were around 18. I stayed with Nana the whole time. I was the lucky one. At times, Nana Mama was a super queen bitch because she knew what was good for me. She had seen my type before. She knew my father, for good and bad. She had loved my mother. Nana Mama was, and is, a talented psychologist. I named her Nana Mama when I was 10. By then, she was both my Nana and my Mama. Her arms were folded across her chest now. Iron will. Alex, I believe I have some bad feelings about this relationship you're involved in, she said. Can you tell me why? I asked her. Yes, I can. First, because Jessie is a white woman, and I do not trust most white people. I would like to, but I can't. Most of them have no respect for us. They lie to our faces. That's their way, at least with people they don't believe are their equals. You sound like a street revolutionary, Farrakhan or Sonny Carson, I said to her. I started to clear the table, carting plates and silverware to stack in our old porcelain sink. I'm not proud of these feelings I have, but I can't help them either. Nana Mama's eyes followed me. Is that Jessie's crime, then? That she's a white woman? Nana fidgeted in her chair. She adjusted her eyeglasses, which were hung around her neck by twine. Her crime is that she goes with you. She seems willing to let you throw away your police career, everything you do here in Southeast, all the good that's been in your life. Damon and Janny. Damon and Janelle don't seem hurt or concerned, I told Nana Mama. My voice was rising some. I stood there with a stack of dirty dishes in my arms. Nana's palm slammed down on the wooden armrest of her chair. Well, damn it, that's because you have blinders on, Alex. You are the sun in the sky for them. Damon is afraid you'll just leave him. Those kids are upset only if you get them upset. I said what I was feeling, what I believed to be the truth. Nana Mama sat all the way back in her chair. The tiniest sound escaped from her mouth. It was pure hurt. That is so wrong for you to say. I protect those two children just like I protected you. I've spent my life caring for other people, looking out for others. I don't hurt anyone, Alex. You just hurt me, I said to her. And you know you did. You know what those two kids mean to me. There were tears in Nana's eyes, but she held her ground. She kept her eyes locked tightly onto mine. Our love is a tough, uncompromising love. It's always been that way. I don't want you to apologize to me later on, Alex. It doesn't matter to me that you'll feel guilty about what you just said to me. What matters is that you are guilty. You are giving up everything for a relationship that just can't work. Nana Mama left the kitchen table, and she went upstairs. End of conversation. Just like that. She'd made up her mind. Was I giving up everything to be with Jessie? Was it a relationship that could never work? I had no way of knowing yet. I had to find that out for myself. Chapter 59. A parade of medical experts now began to testify at the Saniji Murphy trial. Assistant medical examiners took the stand, some of them strangely quirky and flamboyant for scientists. Experts came from Walter Reed, from Lorton Prison, from the Army, from the FBI. Photos and 4x6-foot schematic drawings were displayed and over-explained. Crime scene locations were visited and revisited on the eerie charts that dominated the trial's first week. 8 different psychiatrists and psychologists were brought to the stand to build the case that Gary Saniji Murphy was in control of his actions, that he was a deviant sociopath, that he was rational, cold-blooded, and very sane. He was described as a criminal genius without any conscience or remorse, as a brilliant actor worthy of Hollywood, which was how he'd manipulated and fooled so many people along the way. But Gary Saniji Murphy had consciously and deliberately kidnapped 2 children. He had killed one or both of them. He had killed others, at least 5 and possibly more. He was the human monster we all have nightmares about. So said all the prosecution experts. The chief of psychiatry from Walter Reed was on the stand for most of one afternoon. She had interviewed Gary Murphy on a dozen occasions. After a long description of a disturbed childhood in Princeton, New Jersey, and teenage years marked by violent outbursts against both human beings and animals, Dr. Maria Ruaco was asked to give her a psychiatric evaluation of Gary Murphy. I see someone who is an extremely dangerous sociopath. I believe Gary Murphy is fully aware of all his actions. I absolutely do not believe he is a multiple personality. So it was that Mary Warner artfully laid out her case every day. I admired her thoroughness and her understanding of the psychiatric process. She was assembling a terribly complex jigsaw puzzle for the judge and jury. I'd met with her several times, and she was good. When she was finished, the jurors would have an exquisitely detailed picture in their minds of the mind of Gary Saniji Murphy. Each day of the trial, she would concentrate on one new puzzle piece. She would show them the piece. She would explain it thoroughly. She would then insert the piece into the puzzle. She showed the jury exactly how the new piece related to everything else that had gone before. Once or twice, spectators in the courtroom audience were moved to applaud the soft-spoken prosecutor and her impressive performance. She accomplished all of this while Anthony Nathan was objecting to virtually every point she attempted to make. Nathan's defense was simple enough, and he never wavered from it. Gary Murphy was innocent because he had committed no crime. Gary Saniji had. Anthony Nathan paced the front of the courtroom with his usual swagger. He wore a $1,500 tailored suit, but didn't look at all comfortable in it. The suit was cut well, but Nathan's posture was impossible. It was like trying to dress a jungle gym. I am not a nice person. Anthony Nathan stood before the jury of 7 women and 5 men on the Monday of the second week. At least, not in the courtroom. People say that I have a perpetual sneer, that I'm a pompous man, that I'm an insufferable egomaniac, that I'm impossible to be around for more than 60 seconds. It's all true, Nathan said to his captive audience. It's all true. And that's what gets me into trouble sometimes. I do tell the truth. I'm obsessed with telling the truth. I have no patience, none at all, with half-truths. And I have never taken a case where I cannot tell the truth. My defense of Gary Murphy is simple. Perhaps the least complex and controversial I've ever delivered to any jury. It is about truth. It is all black and white. Ladies and gentlemen, please listen to me. Ms. Warner and her team understand how strong the defense is, and that's precisely why she has just laid before you more facts than the Warren Commission used to prove exactly the same thing, absolutely nothing. If you could cross-examine Ms. Warner, and she would answer honestly, she would tell you that. Then we could all go home. Wouldn't that be nice? Yes, that would be very nice. There were snickers from around the courtroom. At the same time, some members of the jury were leaning in closer to listen and watch. Each time that Nathan passed by, he got a half-step closer to them. Several someones asked me why I took this case. I told them, as simply as I'll tell you now, that the evidence makes this a certain winner for the defense. The truth is overwhelming for the defense. I know you don't believe that now. You will. You will. Here's a stunning statement of fact. Ms. Warner did not want to bring this trial to jury at this time. Her boss, the Secretary of the Treasury, forced this case to trial. He forced the trial to take place in record time. Never have the wheels of justice moved so fast. Those same wheels never would have moved this fast for you or your family. That is the truth. But in this particular instance, because of